That was a nice move by Pipkins, taking it right to the rack himself.
Wide open three, left wing, and it's good.
Nylon, the dunk likes that, Matt.
A three from the right side, and it's good. The one, Pipkins, the man, yet again.
Hello and welcome to The Flex. I'm Matt St. Jean.
And I'm Joe Howie.
And this is unfortunately our first loss episode of the season. This is also going to be a combo episode. It's tournament time, which means 3 games in 3 days. So this is going to be kind of a hybrid episode. We're going to jump around a lot. We're going to talk Providence, Indiana, and we're going to talk Providence, Davidson for tomorrow. But your leading story, the Friars lose to the Indiana Hoosiers 79-58. The game was really never close. The Friars led for 27 seconds. Indiana led by double digits for 29 minutes and 50 seconds. Friars never even got it to single digits in the second half. They tried and they came close at times. We saw more effort in the second half. But all in all, when you go against a team like that, where pretty much everybody thinks it's a 50-50 game on a neutral court, and you lose that badly, the team's worst loss by the box score since that game against Florida in Brooklyn last December, it is certainly a demoralizing way to start the season. Joe, your initial thoughts?
Well, Matt, I think you bring up a great comparison with that Florida game from last December. As you and I both very well know, we were in the building, and that one, there was no air whatsoever from that Providence team. They were a deflated balloon from tip to the final buzzer. And you saw remnants of that today. They had no energy. They did not look very interested in playing the game. And like you said, they did not lead with the exception of the first 27 seconds. So this was a very disappointing game. You know, you have a blowout home opener against Fairfield, who obviously is an inferior opponent. You think you're at least going to compete with what is supposed to be a 50-50 game. I mean, the line was Indiana plus 1.5, or excuse me, minus 1.5. So, I mean, the analysts think it's going to be close. Everyone thinks it's going to be close. You think it's going to be close. You come out and you don't really do anything effective to get the win. I'm disappointed in the veterans because, as I said in the pregame podcast, it's going to come down to the veterans. Don't dig yourself a hole because you're going to be playing catch up the whole game. And that's exactly what they did.
Yeah, it's sloppy and slow start for the Friars. We'll go through this box score real quick, and then we'll come back to talking about a pregame show and talk about what we got right or got wrong about this game, what we thought was important. Your leading scorers, Nate Watson and David Duke, each with 12 points. Your leading rebounder, Noah Horkler, with 9, and your assist leader, David Duke, with 3. We take it back, and that's only 3 assists for your starting point guard, which there's 2 things in there we gotta talk about. But we'll go back. We'll go back to the pregame show real quick. We talked at the end. We have our off the bench. We talk about important stats for each thing, and we have our X factors. So let's start with our off the bench. Joe, you tell us what you said and what went wrong.
What I said in my off the bench is that against Fairfield, it took Providence 8 minutes to warm up and get into a flow of offense, whatever you want to call it. I said against Fairfield, that's not too punishable. Against a Big Ten team like Indiana, you're going to regret doing that. So what did Providence do? They were like, you know what, we're going to score. We're going to score really quick and you know, make you think that we're changing it up, and then we're not going to really do anything effective for the next 39 minutes.
You want a stat here, Joe? It took the Friars 11 minutes and 59 seconds to score 10 points.
Woof.
That is, the last time they were that bad was the home game against Butler back in January, where they also scored only 58 points.
I mean, that game was more digestible than this one, though. I mean, listen, it comes down to the pace of the game. It comes down to being able to control yourselves defensively and turning good defense into better offense. And we just could not get that done today. Our defensive end it looked flat. David Duke, who's supposed to be one of the best defenders in the league, was letting his man float right by him. There was no energy, and I said, don't dig a hole. And what did they do? They got their shovels out. I mean, That's what it comes down to. I mean,
Yeah,
there's no
uh,
sugarcoating that.
very, very slow start for the Friars. My off the bench, I was talking about fouls and free throws. The Friars fouled Fairfield, I believe, 22 times, and Indiana only made 10 of their 22 free throws in their opener. So something to look at for both sides. And the Friars came out, fouled Indiana 21 times, sent them to the free throw line for 24 attempts, and this time Indiana did a lot better. They hit 75% of them. So that's 8 more free throws than they hit than in the game before, and in a game that at some points was around like a 10, 11, 12-point game in the second half. If you could get 5 or 6 points back at the free throw line from your opponent, that right there is certainly something that you would like to change. The Friars looked undisciplined all afternoon. And I'll just transition this into our X factors because we're really talking about the same position here in a lot of ways. My X factor was David Duke. I thought he was going to get a lot of opportunities because there were going to be kickouts to him and he's going to be able to hit the three ball. I thought Nate Watson was going to open some lanes for Duke to drive and score. And I thought he was going to be an asset at the defensive end, and instead you see an early foul getting the team out of their rhythm right off the bat. He had 4 fouls on the day, 4 turnovers, had 12 points, but that's on 12 field goals. He hit only 1 of 5 attempted threes, missed 2 free throws. This is certainly not what you want from him. You had A.J. Reeves, where it's a very similar story.
Yeah, I had AJ Reeves because historically he's been known to be a scorer, specifically beyond the 3-point arc. I thought that it was going to be a stalemate in the paint, which in a way it was. Nate Watson was our most dominant scorer, even though he had the same points recorded as Duke. But regardless, I thought that if you could get it to an open Reeves from beyond the arc, that that could potentially be a difference maker. He went 1 of 5 from three, with only 8 points on the day. A really what would an average, below average performance for a high volume scorer like AJ Reeves. Again, this comes to where he's being played. He traditionally thrives in a 2-3 spot. It seems like they were playing him a little bit bigger today, but there were a lot of different lineups on the floor and a lot of different guys in different positions today. So it's very hard to tell where they want Reeves to be, primarily on the floor.
I think you look at this lineup, Watson is the center, and the other 4 spots you're figuring it out. Those top 3 guards, the guys who you project to be your 1, 2, 3, Bynum, Duke, and Reeves. If you look at the stat sheet, you look at volume, they don't look terrible today, but Bynum only had 1 assist. He missed all 4 threes that he attempted. 2 of them were wide open. Obviously, only 2 rebounds. You're going to get that from a small guy. Reeves with 4 fouls, Duke with 4 fouls, none of them efficient scoring from the field. That is certainly not what you want to see. And we'll get to the forward position in a sec. But at guard, we were talking before the show about what happened last year with Pipkins and Duke at the 1 and the 2. Joe, do you think that there could be something similar going on this year?
Oh yeah. So for anyone who's not familiar, last season, Cooley wanted to try something out with David Duke playing the 1 and Pipkins playing the 2. Now, we all know how that went because we went 7-6 in our non-conference. So when we flip-flopped and we put Pipkins back at the 1 where he rightfully belongs, and David Duke, a natural scorer, at the 2 position, we went on a 13-6 run. So I don't think that's a coincidence that when we put Duke at his natural shooting guard position, we started to win games and have a more efficient offense. And from this is a small sample size and it's only 2 games, but from what we're seeing so far, it's that this is a very similar storyline with Jared Bynum and David Duke, where you'll have some plays where Bynum brings the ball up and some plays where Duke brings the ball up. And if you look at Bynum's assists from last game and compare them to this game where he logged more minutes at the 2, there's a correlation there. When he's off the ball, he's not going to be as efficient distributing, and Duke isn't either. So you need to play David Duke at the 2 is what we're trying to get at here.
Yeah, it should be Bynum at the 1, Duke at the 2, and Reeves at the 3. Putting Duke and Reeves at the 2 and the 3 gets them on the wing, gets them in space, and gives them more scoring opportunities where they're at their best. Now, on the flip side, Bynum as a scorer, I think has been worse than we anticipated. I think we got spoiled a little bit by Pipkin's ability there, and I'm not entirely sure Bynum's going to have that same ability to score, which if your point guard can only dish and can't really be a threat to score against big guys or Big East guys, that puts you at a disadvantage on offense.
No, I definitely agree. I think as Bynum gets a little more comfortable with this team and with this offense, the scoring will come. I mean, he put up a sneaky 9 points today. There were a couple of little drives that he had where he resembled a Pipkins, Malik White, Cartwright hybrid player. But again, you're completely right. He does need to up his scoring a little bit. But I think what this offense needs right now is a table-setting point guard, because that's who starts the offense. That's who brings the ball up. He is the voice of the offense. I mean, you can have captains, you could have leaders in other spots, but the point guard, he's the floor general. He's in charge, and it needs to be one person. You can't have Duke calling the plays, then Bynum calling the plays. If Bynum is recruited to Providence as a table-setting point guard, that's what you need to use him as.
Absolutely. Early in this game, he kind of got thrust into that role. I'm going to have to go back and watch the tape a bit, but talked about how Duke got in foul trouble early. He fouled right away, and then from that point, he got put on the bench. And the substitution there, I'm going through the box score here, looking for it. Wrong end of it. The substitution that they had was Noah Horkler for David Duke. So now you're putting Jared Bynum in a position where it's him, Reeves, who's 6'6", Gant, who is 6'8", I believe 6'7", 6'8", Horkler, who's 6'8", and Watson, who's 6'10". There's really no shooter. Reeves is a shooter, but there's no true scorers there. That's a really tough position to put a point guard in.
Yeah, I mean, I think Cooley was going for a little bit of a matchup nightmare with that with that offensively, and I think defensively he wanted some length in the paint, because let's be honest, they kind of killed us down there, especially rebounding. But you know, putting Horkler in at the 4, I understand it. I would have liked to see, maybe a Chris Monroe or a Bryson Gadeen come in, maybe go a little bit smaller. But again, this game was kind of a wash once we went down in the first half, so there were a lot of, up in the air choices.
Absolutely. I think our least valuable player, or the biggest disappointment we had in this game, probably came at the 4 in Greg Gant. 5 points, only 3 field goals attempted, 4 rebounds, 3 fouls. From the sophomore, I know there's been a lot of hype around his development and the way he can come into this offense. In my eyes, he seemed to be limiting things with his limited ability to score and really very limited ability to rebound.
Yeah, I mean, it's still very early in the season, so to say that he's a complete wash is harsh, and I don't think that's what we're saying at all, and I don't want anyone to take it as that. But I do think he would give us a better look maybe coming off of the bench. I think when you start him, it puts a lot of pressure on his shoulders that he has to overperform to his ability. And I think, having him come off the bench in more of a defensive role at this point in his development would probably be more beneficial to the team. Whereas Noah Horkler, on the other hand, starting in the 4 spot would probably be more beneficial offensively to a team that right now looks like it's struggling on that end.
And let's talk about this starting lineup. Cooley, after the game, said that there will be changes for tomorrow. The Friars take on Davidson at 7 p.m. on Tuesday. Depending on when you're listening to this, this is either tomorrow or today. What changes do you think Ed Cooley is going to make to this starting lineup, and how drastic will they be?
So, quite honestly, I don't know how severe the changes are going to be. I think so. Here's where I'm torn, because I don't know if he's going to change the lineup as a means of punishing players, because I'm not necessarily a fan of that, because I think it kills their confidence. But I do think in terms of looks, he's definitely going to change the lineup. I think Gant is probably going to sit, and I think there may be a combination of Horkler and Watson or Croswell and Watson at the 4 and the 5. In terms of guards, I want to say that he's going to take Duke out, but I don't think he's going to. He seemed pretty high on Duke in the post-game presser. He said that he thinks Duke had a tough night. I think the 1, 2, and 3 stay the same with Duke, Bynum, and Reeves. I'm hoping that he will, maybe take the keys away from Duke and give them to Bynum with regards to the point guard's position. But I think the biggest roster change in terms of the starting 5 that we're going to see tomorrow is someone in place of Greg Gant.
Yeah, I'm absolutely in agreement with you there. I think Horkler for Gant is a near certainty. I'm wrestling with the idea of one or both of Duke and Bynum's getting benched to start the game. I'm thinking they'll play starter minutes, but they're not going to be out there to start the game as Cooley's going to send a message. I think that's probably a bit extreme, but when you look at what Cooley said, that was also a bit extreme. I do think that the game today exposed the fact that there is not a ton of depth at guard. Last year, whether it was Pipkins, Duke, or Reeves, if any of them are having an off night, Malik White could step in, fill in, and give you some points, be an asset on the defensive end of the floor, and be a very solid player. Today was freshman Allen Breed as the first guard off the bench, and Goodine is the second one. Neither of them really looked special. So if you're benching one of those guards, then you have to have somebody else you're putting in there. And I don't know if putting in more forwards is the answer.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think this is a team where you need to put out 3 or 4 forwards. I mean, that's just not the way our offense and defense run. I would say another, and this is probably on the least likely side of things, but I could see maybe Chris Monroe starting in place of AJ Reeves because he brings a similar style of play. I mean,
I like that. I like that.
Reeves is much more agile and quicker, but if you're looking for a spot up shooter, I think you can feed the ball to Monroe in the corner, and you're pretty close to getting a similar jump shot style to AJ Reeves. So I think maybe Monroe could start. I'm a little disappointed in his minutes today. I thought he put in some good defensive minutes when he was subbed in the first half, and then he didn't really come back again till late the second half. I think him and Jimmy Nichols needed more time today, especially on the defensive end. They're big bodies. They're both 6'8". Jimmy Nichols has a huge wingspan, and defensively, where we were suffering, they could have helped. But again, it wasn't in the flow of the game. So that's something I'd like to see change tomorrow too, is off the bench rotations.
I believe you can hear my dog in the background. She is just as upset over this Friars loss as we are. And I know she's also hoping that Cooley makes these changes. Now the Friars played Davidson. Davidson took Texas down to the very end, a 2-point loss. And I mean, Providence now is ranked just outside of the top 60 on KenPom. They're at 61. Davidson is at 77. So this is no slouch of an opponent. This is no sure win for the Friars, especially if they play the way they played today.
No, Matt. I mean, this Davidson matchup reminds me hauntingly of the Charleston matchup from last Thanksgiving when we played. What was that tournament? The Wooden Legacy?
Yeah, it was the Wooden Legacy out in Anaheim.
This is a very, very daunting resemblance of that game because we lost to Long Beach State by 1 point in what was a big upset. We thought we had it. We were up by 16 at one point. And then we had Charleston the next day. We were hoping, we'll bounce back. It was a bad loss, but whatever, we'll bounce back. And Charleston had their way with us. So you know what? I really hope that Ed lays into this team tonight because you don't want to start your season off the same way you did last year.
No, you absolutely cannot. A much, much shorter non-conference play, which means you have to maximize your opportunities. And as you look around the league right now, you're seeing games get pulled and rescheduled all over the place. As of right now, Providence has games against Fairleigh Dickinson and at TCU after this. St. John's just canceled their trip down to Lubbock. They're not going to play Texas Tech anymore because they don't want to risk it with COVID. So that game, which is against a top-tier opponent for the Friars in TCU, that could get pulled. Your game against Fairleigh Dickinson could get adjusted. You don't know the next time for sure you're going to play good teams, so you absolutely have to make the best of it. You have to come out guns blazing. I think this is kind of matching our keys to the game from yesterday, is you have to start strong in any game you play.
Yeah, you do. I mean, you hit the nail on the head there, Matt. There's a closing window of opportunity to rack up quality non-conference wins before you're gonna reach the inevitable Big East bubble. So, and there's a lot of quality teams in the Big East, so there's plenty of room to make up for this loss, because in the big picture, this is not a loss that's gonna prevent you from going into March Madness. But you can't let this loss spark a losing streak against some inferior teams, because then if you let this loss take over your non-conference schedule, that's where you really lose out in the long run. If you look at this objectively and you say, all right, Indiana's a good team, we played a bad game, pick ourselves up, let's move on to the next one, and you come out with a few more wins in the non-conference, then it's okay. This loss is no slap on the wrist. You know, you get over it, you look back at it in March, you're like, oh, two good teams played, we didn't play well. If you let this loss cripple you for the remainder of non-conference and the team starts falling in on itself, similar to what happened last season, then you have a big oh boy moment, because once you're trapped in that Big East bubble, there's no getting out.
There definitely isn't. That is going to be one heck of a bubble once it does form. But I think for now we can categorize this game against Davidson as a must-win for the Friars. That's a 7 o'clock tip-off on ESPN2. This is the Maui Invitational down in North Carolina with Bill Walton announcing, which I think we could have a whole other podcast on him broadcasting these games. The Friars will take on Davidson in what is sure to be, actually not sure to be an exciting game, but sure to be a must-win for the Friars. Hopefully they can come out and play the way they're supposed to. You'll be hearing from us again after that one as we look forward to a third game against a to-be-determined opponent, depending on what happens for the Friars. But you are listening to The Flex. For Joe Howie, I'm Matt St. Jean. Thank you for listening. Make sure to follow us. Follow us on Twitter at The Flex Hoop, Flex Hoops. Follow us wherever you're listening to this. And as always, Joe, sign us off.
Go Friars.